I want to give you an update on a story I talked about. Like, I don't know if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, but here's the story I talked about. A couple weeks ago, a public high school district in Arizona, they signed a contract to build a Mormon seminary on campus. And the thing about Mormon seminary is that Mormons really want kids to get indoctrinated into their religious beliefs. And they know a lot of kids start questioning their faith in middle school and high school and beyond. And since they got to go on their mission trips after high school, it's like, well, we got to get you in the fold real soon. And so, if you know any Mormon kids, they probably have to go to seminary, religious indoctrination class. And sometimes when they're enrolled in a public school, it's like, well, when do you have time to take these classes? Because they do not do it just on Sunday mornings. No, these classes might take place every day of the week. So they might go really early before school. They might leave the school for released time in the middle of the day, go to a local Mormon temple, get their education, religious education, and then come back to school. And so the story we talked about recently is that in the Vail Unified School District near Tucson, Arizona, at Cienega High School, the Mormon Church came to the school board and said, you have some space on your high school campus. We will pay like $500,000 to build a tiny little building in this area, and then we'll gift it to you. We'll pay for the building and we'll give it to you. And in return, you will use it. You will rent it out to whoever wants it. And we, the Mormon Church, will pay for a 10-year lease on the building that we are going to build for you. So they're going to pay for the building. They're going to lease it out for 10 years from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every school day. And the reason they were doing that is they said there's a lot of Mormons in this area. And instead of making them drive like 15 minutes away and then another 15 back, leaving them with like 10 minutes to learn religious education, they said, if we're just on your campus, we'll have a lot more time for religious education classes. So let us do this. And the school board was like, that sounds awesome. And they signed the contract. And the things that contract said were, you will build the building. We will lease it out to you for 10 years. Your rent will be a whopping $100 a month, which is way lower than what you and I would pay for if we wanted to rent space on their campus. The Mormon Church would pay $500 for like maintenance and utilities and getting the janitors to clean up the building and all that stuff. The Mormon Church said, we want 4 parking spaces right next to the building. And so that means teachers cannot use all that stuff. Students cannot use the parking spots. And the school board signed off on this. And no one in the community knew what had happened until the contract was already signed. And they were furious. And there were local news reports about this. And you had people saying, one, why weren't we informed about all this as this was being discussed? Because apparently it had been in the works for like 13 years, but no one ever said anything. And also, church-state separation. Why are you allowing a religious group to have its own building on campus? Like, what happens if the Satanic Temple decides to do a Kickstarter to do the same thing? Are you going to allow any religious group to just build whatever they want on campus? And how come they're getting a sweetheart deal when it comes to rent? Like, none of this makes any sense. All of this feels really illegal. And it is bizarre that all of you are going all in on this, right? And in terms of the legal problems, there's a group called Secular Arizona. And I mentioned this in my last video. They wrote a letter to the school board, basically a cease and desist letter, basically saying, we know you signed the contract, but if you go through with this, we have grounds to sue the school district and we will win because the law is on our side. Not only for the church-state separation stuff, but specifically, Arizona's constitution has something called a Blaine Amendment, which says no public money, no public resources can be used to promote religion. And you are doing that by building a Mormon center on campus. So, like, we're going to sue you if you go through with this. I know the contract is signed, but, like, get out of it. That's what Diane Post, the lawyer for Secular Arizona, wrote to them. And what in addition to calling out the Blaine Amendment and the church-state separation stuff, she said fair market value to rent out this space should be closer to $27,000 a year, not $1,200, which is what the Mormon Church is paying. By the way, you can't just give away parking spots. Those are for the community, things like that. And the other thing that was pointed out, not just by Diane Post, but by a lot of people in the community, is that why isn't the Mormon Church doing at this school district what the Mormon Church does in a lot of places around the country, especially if there's a lot of Mormons in one place, which is just build something near the campus, like off the school property, but like across the street or nearby. Why don't you just build something there? And then students who want to, and then it's not a church-state separation issue. But why do you have to be on campus? That's not right. So she wrote a letter. Diane Post of Secular Arizona did. The Freedom from Religion Foundation wrote a letter that said this is clearly illegal. It's favoring students who are members of the Mormon Church. And I told you this was a happy story, right? Here's why. On Tuesday, April 22nd, this is what the school district posted on Facebook. Dear Vail parents, staff, and greater community, here's an update. Look at the next paragraph. Yesterday, we met with representatives of the Mormon Church to discuss the status of the agreement. Earlier this evening, we received formal written notice from the church indicating their decision to exercise their contractual rights to terminate the agreement. The Mormon Church went to the school district and said, you know what, I know we signed the contract and all, but let's rip it up. We no longer want a building on your campus. In short, this action by the church brings the lease and donation agreement to a close. And then some other crap. So the deal is off. And the Mormon Church is the group. They got everything they wanted. Sweetheart deal. They got the space. They got everything they could have wanted, because the school district officials are too dumb to realize they are breaking the law here. And the Mormon Church went to the school board and said, yeah, we're going to call backsies on this. We don't want it. Here's the reverse Uno card. Why? Why did they suddenly make a switch after they got everything they wanted? I don't know. I have a couple ideas. So a couple things about the school district's message. First of all, there was no apology in that message. There was no mention that they screwed up, that they did anything wrong, that the contract should never have been signed in the first place. Nothing like that. The school board did not acknowledge the legal threats and the letters they got saying, if you go through with this, we are going to sue you. They did not mention that at all. There's no mention that the school board members have any clue they screwed up. So why shouldn't I think you're just going to do this again in the future, right? But one of the reasons I think the Mormon Church felt jittery about all this is because about a week ago, after stories about this agreement got on the local news, were written about by myself and others, there was so much backlash that the superintendent of this district said, hey, community, I'm going to hold a public meeting to answer your questions about this. And so many people showed up to complain about it all. This is from a local newspaper about it all. Retired teachers, residents, and parents of students and former students said they felt enraged, frustrated, and disenfranchised with how the agreement with the church was carried out. Caruth, who's the superintendent, told them that while the agreement with the church has been signed, the district is functionally in a pause state as far as moving forward with design or construction of any of the things. So like, don't be mad at us. We haven't done anything yet, even though the contract is signed and we totally will. What? He said there was something else in this article as well. Where did it go? Here we go. Throughout the almost 3-hour meeting, the superintendent, Caruth, apologized to the public for how the agreement between the district and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was pursued and executed. He said that he underestimated the public's concern. Really? Maybe you didn't ask. He said he will bring back the concerns to the board, which is also engaging with the church and the district's legal advisors about how to proceed. So this dude is like a Republican holding a town hall meeting, and everyone's pissed off. And they're like, what? You're all mad? But don't you love Elon? And this is the first time they're hearing no one likes anything they're doing. And so that was huge. You have all these community members, not atheists, by the way, not just atheists, but you had a lot of community members speaking out against it. They cited church-state separation, by the way. They did not buy the argument that the district's lawyers looked at all of this and they said, everything's cool. They're like, I think we need new lawyers. And also Secular Arizona's lawyer, Diane Post, she sent a follow-up letter to the district saying, I heard what your lawyers have said in response to what I pointed out, and they're still wrong, and I want to tell you why you're still going to lose if this case ends up in court. But the Mormon Church hasn't said anything yet. We don't know why they canceled the contract. Did they do it because, and this is just a theory on my end, do they think, wow, there's a lot of backlash to this already, and if we build this building on campus, people are just going to not like the Mormon Church, and we are far better off just canceling this contract, trying to maintain some goodwill, and we'll just try to build a building across the street maybe. Is that why? Because the backlash convinced them that maybe this wasn't worth it, even though the price was good? I don't know. I wish we knew. I did ask Secular Arizona, hey, so you guys got what you wanted. What did you say in response? Jean Castine, who's their executive director, she told me, we are proud of the tireless legal work led by Diane Post and our legal team that made this reversal happen. And then Diane Post said to me, this is a public high school, not a platform for religious proselytizing. We had to act, and we did. So that is awesome. But just to point out, in all of this, the board members of this school district, they failed. Their lawyers failed. The superintendent failed. And the Mormon Church was ready to pounce on the district's ignorance. And they got everything they wanted. But then the people who understand church-state separation began to speak up, and they got this thing canceled. That is incredible. I did not think that was going to happen. But sometimes, when you fight, I know Rachel Maddow has said this for weeks now, sometimes when you fight, you actually win. And this is a win for everybody in that community, including the Mormons, whether they like it or not. If they want to go to religious education class at some point during the day or before school, they still can. Just find the local Mormon temple or tell the temple, they have enough money in the Mormon Church, tell them to build a place across the street. That's fine. All right, I'm going to stop there with this story. What questions do we have here? The Mormons have some really good lawyers, but it sounds like they got a bit too greedy with this one. Not as familiar with Arizona state law as they are Utah's. Maybe. Again, I have to think the Mormon Church knew this might be illegal, but they thought we can get away with it. But everything I've heard from the school district makes it sound like they had no clue this would be a problem, which tells you a lot about that school board. To be clear, the land is the expensive part, not the building. So the fact that LDS was going to build a building and donate it wasn't a significant enticement. Yeah, they were going to get this land on the campus, and they could do kind of whatever they needed to during 12 hours a day. That's a lot of kids you can lure in. The Mormon Church in my city is trying to take over the school board. They run for election for school board. This is something that happens with evangelical churches too. Sometimes they try to take over a school board. Sometimes they try to take over a city council. And there's nothing illegal about that. There's not like a law, nor should there be, that says, Mormons are not allowed to run for office. That would be wrong. I am against that. But what's scary is the only reason they want to do it in a lot of these cases where they're running as a slate of candidates from a particular church is because it's never for good reasons. It's always because they're like, we want to ban books. So let's get all the evangelicals in this community for us this way. That's where it gets scary. I don't care if there's a whole board full of religious people. Just like I don't care if the president is religious. I want to know what they're going to do about that. And generally speaking, Democrats are not going to try to shove their religion in your face. Republicans absolutely are. You know what I mean? So same thing. I don't know that I have a problem with Mormons trying to take over the school board. I still want to know what is it that you're trying to change that needs to change, and then we'll vote accordingly. right, LDS estimated net worth is $290 billion. Can't they build their own church? Church is not what you wrote. I mean, yes, they have the money to do it, but you realize if they build anything, that might take away from the $290 billion. I don't get this about rich people. Like, they could do so much stuff. They could give away all the money they want, and they'll always have plenty, if not more than they started with. And yet, those are the stingiest people who never want to do anything to help the public, often. Again, this isn't a money thing. The Mormon Church can do whatever it wants. And in this case, what they wanted was to build something on a public high school campus. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. And only now they're backing out and they won't tell anyone why.